Johanna Mason. How do I describe this human being? Well, in her own words, I would say she's pretty... good attributes about this person. She has a dark sense of humor. She speaks her mind, yells a lot, which is nice, and she's really good at attacking air particles with an axe. Like, look at her. Just slaying nothing like a champion. But why? Why was she so good with the axe? Well, to answer that question, we have to go back to her origin. Johanna, this person that we're gonna be talking about, was born and raised on the rough side of District 7, also known as the lumber and the paper district, where wood chopping happens there. It's the wood chopping district, essentially. Meaning she's been swinging that axe and tossing other various axes ever since she could toddle. Because, you know, child labor. Actually, you know what? You want to just skip this part and then go to the part that we all want to talk about. The thing that we all need to talk about. The 71st Hunger Games. I really like making these videos, so I think now is a good time to talk about today's sponsor helping make all this video that you're currently watching happen. And that would be no one other than today's sponsor, BetterHelp. This thing. So if you don't know, BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service, and they're able to be the world's largest therapy service because they're 100% online. When it comes to this kind of stuff, the number one thing that I hear from everyone, including their pet parrot named Leonard, is that finding a therapist can be really challenging, but finding the right therapist can be like dang near impossible. So freaking BetterHelp over here has a network of over 30,000 licensed and experienced therapists. Getting started with BetterHelp is so freaking peanut butter and easy. I don't know if that's an expression, but I feel like we all got the sentiment of what I meant. They're gonna have you fill out this simple questionnaire talking about your needs and preferences in therapy, so they can match you with that personalized therapist from their network of over 30,000 licensed and experienced. After that, you can talk to your therapist over text, chat, video call, voice call. I don't know what your lifestyle is, but you can message your therapist at any single time. We're talking 24/7. But if you're like me and you want to be more schedule oriented, you can schedule live sessions whenever it's convenient for you. And let's say, like, worst case scenario, you don't think that you and your therapist are a right fit. Ain't gonna be a problem. BetterHelp is gonna switch you to a new therapist at any time you want at no additional cost. So even though BetterHelp is 100% online, as previously discussed, you're still getting the same professionalism and quality of in-office therapy. So if all that sounds pretty good, you can click on this link in the description below or in the pinned comment, and then it's gonna give you 10% off your first month. It's the link with my channel name. I don't know why I picked my full legal name to be the name of my channel, but that's not the point of what I'm trying to say right now. Go click on the link if you want to try out BetterHelp. Anyway, okay, Linus, pay attention, okay? Over here. So on Reaping Day, tributes got to be careful with how they react. Everything that you do or say is going to be used against you in an arena of your peers. So for a second, let's imagine that you're a tribute, for example. You got your name picked and you have to reluctantly walk up onto that stage. Everything you do from this moment forward is going to be recorded on these things that we in the film industry call cameras. And the footage from these cameras are going to be broadcasted across the nation on repeat, meaning that you are now uncomfortably under a microscope. All of your reactions are going to be played back and analyzed by the competition. You remember, the people whose job it is to kill you. They're just going to be casually sitting there looking at the highlights of all your weaknesses. Needless to say, this plays a big role in how the career tributes are going to be picking their allies. When analyzing this info, the careers will either strategize to go for the strong tributes and ignore the weakest, or vice versa. This is why Katniss had to hold back a bunch of emotions after doing her sister a solid. And this is why Megs tells Finnick to stop showing her a bunch of love, because she knew that everyone's going to look at her, as in Megs, as Finnick's weakness. So you need to stop it. Just stop. It's very common that no tribute wants to look weak when they're getting picked. The real strategy, it seems, is to be Switzerland, to be as neutral as possible. And this is why every time the universe and my higher being give me the opportunity, I refer to Primrose Everdeen as cannon fodder. Just to hammer in the fact that if this weakest link entered the games, she would be gone in like a second. She would have got quicker than something that's really quick. And she would have not have gotten anyone before she got. Not that it matters anyway, because she got in the end. Oh, spoilers. by the way. Anyway, Johanna, this girl that I haven't been talking about at all, actually used the whole looking weak thing to her advantage. In her unconventional strategy, Johanna intentionally appeared afraid in front of the weird looking cameras. Like, what are these things? She was able to give off this appearance by doing things like sniveling, cowering away from whatever the heck these cameras are, and overall, acting a fool. But she was no fool. No, she wasn't, Linus. I'm just gonna go ahead and assume that she was a little less flashy with her axe skills when in the training center, because all the tributes severely underestimated her abilities. So when preparing for the games, everyone, and I mean like everyone, ignored her. She successfully made everyone disregard the vulnerable and frightened tree. Meaning whilst in the arena, the career tributes prioritized eliminating the stronger tributes, and then they started eliminating the other careers until there was like only a handful of players left. Then Johanna went in for the kill. Or kills, as she viciously started picking them off one by one. Annie Cresta won the 70th games because the dam broke and flooded the entire arena. And Annie, being from District 4, made it so that she had the best swimming skills. So the arena fit her background. And I think that the arena in the 71st games, aka Johanna's games, fit her background as well. It must have been very tree heavy, something like what we saw in the 74th games. Remember that whole second rebellion thing that happened at some point in the series? Do you also remember that moment during the second rebellion when all the District 7 workers climbed up those trees like a bunch of freaking tree climbers? Well, if Johanna possessed the same skill set, there is no way that she did not use her tree climbing abilities to her advantage when slaying those other tributes. She definitely hid up there in the trees during the beginning of the games to avoid the tributes and the careers. But then she could have used the elevation to her advantage in order to stalk and hunt the other tributes. Maybe even jumping down from the tree and then slamming the targeted tribute into the ground and then completely taking them off the planet. Basically, Johanna won the games because she had the high ground. By 75 ATDD, Johanna was 21. Though also super fun fact, by 75 ATDD, Johanna was the only living female victor from District 7. So she got the Katniss Everdeen treatment when her name got picked for the Quarter Quell. I was kind of curious about how they would go about selecting a victor for the Quarter Quell if the district didn't have any victors remaining. Like, would they just pull a new tribute out of the pile again? But I feel like that would kind of defeat the novelty of the Quarter Quell, because it's all about using victors and not just picking more randos. Yeah, I don't know how they would approach that. That's a tough one. I'm gonna think about that for the next 10 years. Regardless, one could say that Johanna did not have a good time in the 75th games, starting with her wardrobe. Like most of modern day Hollywood, the stylists of her district are completely unoriginal, uninspired, creatively bankrupt, compromised by nepotism, overvalued, so okay with phoning it in and thinking. So for the past 40 years, they've been wrongfully entrusted with making their tributes into some variation of a tree. It's always a tree. So for 2 years, Johanna was a tree. She literally received the same kind of treatment that one talentless kid in the school play gets, where the teacher's all like, oh, I hate my day job. And okay, you can't act and you can't sing, kid. And you don't show any signs of talent or potential. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to make you the closest thing to an inanimate object that we can. And we're just going to see what happens. It's a pretty bold strategy. I should know, I once played a rock. But Johanna still manages to have fun whenever she can. In the books, it's a little different when they're in the elevator training center. When Johanna decides to casually strip down to her forest green slippers. Forest green, because of the whole tree thing that you and I previously discussed. Then she ends up chilling with Peeta for a solid moment and a half, discussing his paintings and making Katniss peanut butter and jelly. She's doing this to mess with Katniss. The overall intent is to just with her, because Katniss had an aversion for watching Peeta remove his clothing the first time that they were in the games together, as that moment was broadcasted to the entire nation. And Johanna's like, okay, noted. I'm gonna use this to mess with the girl on fire. Speaking of Johanna's district partner, Blight, I know no one was discussing him, but not much is known about Blight. He didn't even really show up to training. While Johanna was training how to wrestle so she could later pin down Katniss and rip a tracker out of her, leaving a scar the size of an apple behind, Blight was nowhere to be seen. Plus, Blight went out pretty quickly. He hit a force field and died instantly because someone like Finnick wasn't there to restart his heart. After the tragic loss of Blight, well, it's not that tragic, actually, Mason depressingly claimed he wasn't much, but he was from home, reacting in the complete opposite way that Annie did when she lost her district partner. I just realized Johanna and Beatty and Finnick all lost their district partners in the 75th games. In fact, everyone else lost their district partner from every game up until the 75th games. Katniss would have been the last one to lose hers. But yeah, that's everything I had to say about Blight. After losing who I personally think is a horribly uninteresting character, Johanna was left hanging out with Nuts and Volts. Nuts as in Wirus, and Volts as in Beatty. Johanna gave them these nicknames because Nuts was just radiating cuckoo bird energy, and Volts was foreshadowing how Beatty basically invented this electrical wire that would be used to destroy the arena, and blah 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 blah. The power throuple wasn't really a power throuple for that long. In fact, they weren't really a power throuple at all. There was no cuddle puddling in this trio. Instead, it was almost as if Johanna had no other choice but to be allies with them, mainly because she tells Katniss that very thing.
I got them out for you!
I'm just gonna say it. I think Johanna was a phenomenal ally to have in the arena.
I'll get you some water.
Even though she would occasionally do stuff like slapping Katniss across the face and going on to say, and I quote, "Go ahead, try it. I don't care if you're knocked up. I'll rip your throat out." But for some reason, Katniss didn't trust her that much. Catnip Evermean would think thoughts in her head like, I know I can't kill her right now, but it's just a matter of time with Johanna and me before one of us offs the other. The point that I'm trying to make is Johanna was a good ally. She would do productive things like burying an axe in Cashmere's chest, which helps the group. And Johanna was relentless. She never rested and she refused to lay down. Some people, like the ones trying to protect Panem's favorite Pillsbury doughboy, would misconstrue this behavior as her being just determined to win the games and kill everyone the first opportunity that she gets. But as you and I hopefully know by now, that wasn't the case. The one thing Johanna's bad at is keeping secrets.
Secrets.
Johanna is so freaking candid that in like the first 5 milliseconds of reuniting with Katniss, she almost reveals the entirety of Plutarch's plan, claiming Finnick had to intervene by picking her up and then dunking her head in water. Then Johanna later has to clarify that Haymitch said if she brought Katniss nuts and bolts, then Katniss would be her ally. It was a good save. But the reason I'm bringing up this moment in particular is that it's a good way to indicate that Johanna was never really meant to be a propo girl for the Capitol or District 13. Some people may be like, I don't know, I feel like she could have served as the Mockingjay. And to those people, I'm just gonna say, no. Let's put it this way. Even though Johanna was very much anti-Capitol, she was much harder to control than Katniss. Like, I'm trying to think of a few moments that show this uncontrollable behavior. There was no one left who she loved. I feel like she may have said that at one point during the story. There was this wild invention called drawers in District 13. The indoctrinated soldiers or the hesitant residents like Katniss had their own drawers. They could fill it to the brim with personal belongings. For example, in Katniss's drawer, she had a photo of her dad, the locket containing a picture of Prim, Gale, and her mother, who apparently has a name now, as well as a pearl, Peeta's pearl. The pearl from Peeta. But Johanna had nothing. She didn't have a thing. In her drawer was just government-issued clothing, symbolic of how the girl had nothing to lose. Coin would have hated this. Like, Coin didn't want Katniss, we know that, because she thought Katniss was too unpredictable and hard to control.
You will hold yourself and your government responsible, or you will find another Mockingjay.
Don't make me do this!
Peeta was the one who was supposed to live.
Miss Everdeen.
Now imagine if Coin was presented with somebody like Johanna to be the Mockingjay. This is gonna sound mean because I intended to be that way, but Johanna knew in her heart that she could have never been the Mockingjay simply because no one likes her. Her speech in the 75th games could have brought, more of the nation onto her side.
Hey, how does that sound, Snow? What if we set your backyard on fire?
But the Capitol cut away from that before the audiences could even really witness it. Johanna still had the same kind of anti-establishment angst as Katniss, and they wouldn't need to feed her lines as well. Johanna recognized all this, and I feel like this is what made her feel low-key jealous of all the attention and care her fellow Victor was receiving. She also loathed the whole romantic drama situation between K and P.
Peeta.
As she was probably envious because she had a romantic interest at some point and lost it to the Capitol or even the games. I don't know. It's just speculation.
Can't hurt me. There's no one left that I love.
Even though she wasn't really meant for the spotlight, Johanna was tortured into appearing in multiple Capitol propos for the Capitol. But even after all that torture, she still couldn't appear happy or supportive towards their cause. Like, look at this. Like, look how obvious it is that she doesn't want to be there. Johanna was almost tortured to death in the Capitol. By the time of her rescue, she had a fully shaved head and she was covered from head to toe in scars. Scars that were completely non-existent in the films. It took a couple of weeks for hair to start sprouting up and covering the scars on her head. But it wasn't just the non-existent scars that stuck with her. She was suffering from PTSD, and her treatment led to her developing a slight morphling addiction, which is why at the beginning of Mockingjay Part 2, she's stealing some of Katniss's supply. In fact, Katniss was setting aside some extra morphling just for Johanna. Remember in Mockingjay when Katniss just showed up to the battlefield that was the Capitol? Well, in the books, not in the movies, but in the books, Katniss had to undergo rigorous training in order to get the opportunity to go there. Katniss and Johanna were in training together. At this point in the story, Katniss wasn't sure if her and Johanna were friends, but she was pretty dang sure they were allies because they both wanted to make sure that Snow got. So they went into training with a vengeance. They would do workouts, drills, weapons practice, attending lectures on tactics, etc. When they first report to class, they realize they're stuck learning with a bunch of 14-year-olds. And at first they're a little insulted, but then they realize how far ahead of the game these 8th graders are. So it kind of humbles them. Johanna watches as Katniss feels a tremendous amount of pain after every exercise or every stretch, as well as witnessing how Katniss couldn't even run more than a mile. So Johanna starts insulting her, but in like an endearing, motivational kind of way. Even though Johanna is sick and rocking this greenish color and shaking like a leaf, she finds the energy to say to Katniss, and I quote, "You can do it. We both can. We're victors, remember? We're the ones who can survive anything they throw at us." Which is a lot better than that quote of hers that I quoted earlier in this video. The one about her ripping Katniss's throat out. Johanna would also do things like take a break from taunting Annie with shared memories of the Capitol and use those same memories to help Katniss through some of those complicated feelings that she has with Peeta, defending Peeta's character. When Katniss claims that he's changed, Johanna reminds her of how the arena changes everyone who exits it, using Annie Cresta as the poster child of that, but also reminding Katniss that she's no longer the same girl who volunteered for cannon fodder over here. Mason would even bring up some really bad memories from the Capitol, like hearing Peeta's screams every day and comparing them to the Jabberjays in the arena, except it would usually take an hour for the screams to stop. I'm safely assuming Johanna was receiving a similar kind of treatment at some point. Even though Johanna's this motivational coach for Katniss, she starts running into her own roadblocks as well. For example, Mason struggled to walk into the rain, avoiding the fallen water droplets like they were acid. Johanna couldn't take a shower, and instead she would wipe herself down with a damp cloth. There was a layer of grime building up under her fingernails. Ignorant Katniss was unaware of the PTSD that Johanna was experiencing, and she just naively thought that people from District 7 never bathed. But what was actually happening is that the scientists over at the Capitol soaked Johanna in water and then used electrical shocks to torture her. So by just seeing the rain, Johanna was a nervous wreck, and she couldn't assemble her rifle without help from the Chosen One. So then Katniss has to step up and help Johanna with this kind of stuff. They spent hours studying together, learning military terms, and etc. Johanna was such an important character in the books because she was the one who significantly helped Katniss make it through that training so that she could actually fight in Squad 451. When they were done, Johanna claimed that winning the games seemed easier than the training. Johanna was on her way to the Capitol, but then the block happened. The temporary tattoos on their arms listed Katniss and Johanna's assignment as SSC, as in Simulated Street Combat. The block was an artificial city block of the Capitol. This is where the instructor breaks the trainees, aka people like Katniss and Johanna, into squads of 8 so they can simulate carrying out a mission like gaining a position, searching a building, destroying a target, etc. Johanna and Katniss we're doing pretty good. Like when the entire place filled with toxic gas, they were the only ones to get their face masks on in time. It wasn't until Johanna was in her own squad during the simulation that things took a turn in the wrong direction. They flooded the block with water, which, given the context that I gave you, I think you and I can both safely assume by now that Johanna did not take this well. In fact, it caused Johanna to have flashbacks, resulting in her having no idea where she was. After this, the doctors in 13 deemed Johanna too unstable to be released from the hospital. Plus, they were catching on to her morphling addiction, which wasn't helping her get sent out into the field. Like at all. This is when Katniss realizes that she and Finnick are the closest things to friends that Johanna has in her life. Before visiting Johanna in the hospital, Katniss ventures out into the woods in order to find pine needles. She goes up to a big old pine tree and strips handfuls of fragrant needles from it, and then bandages it together in a nice little bundle that's the size of an apple. Do you get it? The same size of the scar that Johanna left in Katniss. When Katniss sees her in the hospital, Johanna is struggling to stay awake from the drugs. So Katniss hands her the bundle of pine needles, telling her it's something to put in her drawer. Something to finally put in this empty void of the universe. Johanna smells it and claims it smells like home. In this moment, tears flood her eyes. The curiosity and abrasiveness that you and I have both grown so accustomed to over the past video are gone. But then the curiosity like immediately comes back when she entertains the idea of putting Snow's daughter in the Hunger Games reboot. Like how Sam Claflin was the perfect casting choice for Finnick Odair, I think Jena Malone was the perfect casting choice for Johanna Mason. Like Catching Fire's producer Nina Jacobson claimed that they really had no choice when picking Jena Malone for the role, going on to say things like, when Jena Malone came in, her audition was so intense and raw and dangerous. She just nailed it. Okay, I think that's it for the video.